Hello and welcome to Garry's Garage. I've spent the last 2 weeks tidying my garage and putting in some new equipment, so I thought this video I'd give you a tour. So if you were watching last week, you'll have seen at the end of the video that I indicated that I might not get anything done on the Anglia because I had to go and collect some more equipment that used to be my dad's. He unfortunately passed away from pancreatic cancer last year, and I have been slowly, as time and COVID allows, getting down to his place, bringing some stuff back home and trying to integrate it into my garage. And I bought the next batch of stuff up and had a good rearrange in the garage. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to give you a tour of the garage as it currently is, talk about the minor changes that I've made, and hopefully give you some ideas and inspiration of what you might be able to do in your garage. Now, I am very lucky here in that I have a reasonable sized garage, especially for UK. It is 5.5 meters long and 4 meters wide. I, however, am totally spoilt by my dad, who had a 9 by 9 meter workshop, and of course much bigger, over 4 times the size of this, and he really didn't have to worry about space. I do, so I've had to try to get some of the most important to me bits of his equipment and tools and integrate them into the space I've got here. So without any further ado, let's make a start of a tour around the workshop and I'll show you what I've done and why. So the first thing is my welders. I used to have the TIG welder over on the bench, but I've decided that I wanted it on a trolley, so I very quickly knocked up a very basic trolley just out of a few scraps of metal, and I also have 3D printed up some supports to hold the tubes with all of the filament in. So being able to do that with a 3D printer is really, really useful. The tub on top here just contains sort of some of the basics you need for welding. So I've got my helmet, gloves, and all of the TIG accessories and torch and earth lead, and also an extended earth lead there, which is an old jumper cable or battery cable, and that helps to find a clean bit of metal on the car. So those are all nicely accessible and I can drag them out as needed. And I've obviously got the MIG there, which again my dad has owned for many, many years and is a very good, reliable machine. And just on top of it there at the moment are just a few empty storage tubs, some sweets, not sponsored, but if Haribo want to give me sweets, I will gladly take them. And yeah, at the moment the top of that is just a bit of a dumping ground, and I have a small step ladder there. Not that I really need it for anything in the workshop, but it's there so it's easily accessible. Then on the windowsill I'm storing my axle stands, so they're out of the way, they're easily grabbable, and otherwise that windowsill would be wasted. And over here in this corner, tucked up by the door, is an old cabinet that my father-in-law had, and I think it was his dad's, and that's got a few saws in. So that keeps those out of the way, sharp implements well out of the way of everybody. We're moving on then to the first kind of lot of storage, and I have some of these spooled clear see-through boxes and various sizes, and also some washing powder boxes, and I've just got a selection of things that I need, parts, equipment, and at the moment my trolley jack is just sitting down on the floor. So next up I've got a couple of quite large items which, yes, do take up a lot of floor space for the amount of time that I use them. However, having them is definitely invaluable when you need them. However, of course, there are alternatives to having them. You can always find somebody fairly local who has a press and a lathe. It may be a local machining shop or your local garage, and if you do need assistance, then try giving these people a call and they are sure will be happy to help. But obviously having them is very, very useful. and can certainly save you having to wait till the next day to finish off a job. For example, something like a wheel bearing. I could replace a wheel bearing using this in an evening, so it's definitely good. It would save me from having to have the car off the road for too long. But I know it is definitely a luxury, but I feel that the benefits of having them outweigh the floor space loss by having them in here, and the ability to not have something else in its place. I think I prefer to have the press and the lathe, definitely, rather than not having them and using the floor space for something else. And on the windowsill, I just have a few more things. So I have the lathe tools, some old storage pots just at the moment that I haven't quite tidied up. And in the floor space between it, I have a little step stool, also useful as a little seat for sitting down beside a car. And I've also got my little stool on wheels, and this transforms down into a creeper. So occasionally useful, especially if you're on sort of slightly dirty ground. I do find myself not really using it as much as I probably should, because I am very limited on height, so it's difficult for me to get a car up high enough to get this and me underneath it. Usually there's just enough space to get me underneath it, and you know, the car's right up against my chest, so the extra few inches of this, I tend to avoid it, so mostly it's used as a stool at the moment. And then behind me I have a selection of various oils and such like, lubricants and coolant and all those kind of bottles that fit there. And I've got a stack of metal down here in the corner, and that's for my fabrication and also sort of some of the lathe stuff as well. So moving on then towards the bench, and obviously a bench is very important. Well, I certainly think so anyway, because it gives you a nice, solid, comfortable area to work at that's at a nice standing height. I have a vise, a grinder which I can move around and clamp down where necessary, and a pillar drill, and that tends to do most of what I need it to do at the moment. So the bench is just an old piece of kitchen worktop on a custom frame, and above it here I have now added my nuts, bolts, screws and washers and all that kind of thing into all these tubs, and they are now, most importantly, labelled, because I didn't have anything labelled before. And it was a pain to try to find all these things. I also at one point just had all of the bolts just in one big tin, and that doesn't work either. So definitely was worth the time separating all these out and most importantly labelling them. And under the bench I have my compressor is stored in this box here, and that is soundproofed in order to make it much quieter, as I will try to demonstrate now. And then I have a selection of drawers with various things in, and again, most of them are labelled. The ones I've not labelled are ones that I still haven't quite finished sorting through yet, so there is still a little bit to do. And over in the corner there I have a workmate tucked in the little gap that's created down the side, and my bin and dustpan and brush. So I've got a dedicated area for those at the moment. So then above the bench I have added also another couple of shelves, and these extend round the corner, and that allowed me to get a few more things up and well out of the way and nicely arranged and organised into their relevant groupings. And yes, there is a lot of brake cleaner. I go through it, it is fantastic stuff, I love it. It cleans stuff brilliantly. And then there is the toolbox. Now, my dad being a qualified mechanic, he obviously bought into all the snap-on hype, and I have now obviously inherited quite a lot of snap-on stuff, but to be fair, it is very solid and exceptionally heavy. So as you can see, I've got various drawers labelled up. There are some that aren't labelled and they're currently empty with room for expansion. So for example, I've got all my marker pens and marking stuff in there. and a whole drawer of vice grips, because you never know when you might need them, certainly with some of the fabrication. And then this trolley underneath it as well has got various things in it, and again, mostly labelled up. So I've already said that I have a couple of things that are massive overkill for a home garage, being the press and the lathe. And the other thing is a full computerised 4-wheel alignment system. And this is a Hunter, and this is what I believe to be one of the best. Whenever I've got cars aligned, I've always tried to hunt out, no pun intended, a garage that has a Hunter, because I think they are the best. And I managed to pick this one up a few years ago for the princely sum of £310. It was sold unseen and not known whether it was working, just as spares or repairs, and it had no keyboard, mouse, monitor. It was just the box and all the sensors that go on the wheels. And after about an hour of hunting around in the loft for old stuff, old monitors and keyboards and stuff, and getting the computer working, it now works, and it is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I think this is my best piece of equipment in the garage. Maybe one over there that might be better, but at the moment this is definitely my favourite. And with having made all of the rear suspension on the Anglia totally custom, we got this in order to make sure that what we did was as close to perfect as we could get it. And certainly after the car has been on the Hunter machine and it's been aligned, it does drive so much better even than my string box. My string box was okay, but this is much better. So when I said the other day that I have something in line for doing something better than string box, this is it. So yeah, total overkill for a home garage. I have sacrificed a lot of space for it. I would have sacrificed the press and the lathe, but thankfully I've been able to get both in. So yeah, look out for this in an upcoming episode. I will go into more depth about it, and we will get that Anglia aligned perfectly, and it should drive spot on. So we've almost done a full tour of the garage now, and over near the door again is another shelving unit with more storage and boxed equipment. So I've got things like, and again I haven't labelled them yet, but I will. I have taps and dies and a Dremel and some drills and screws. I've got some sort of car-based electricals in there, like a timing light and various other things. And then just various other boxed things, including a whole load of hole saws. And then just below it, again, a few just other boxed things. And I've got a bin down here that has some old rags in, useful just for grabbing when things are getting mucky. And a bucket down here that is full of kitty litter, which is a much cheaper way of picking up oil and water spills from the floor rather than the dedicated garage stuff. And I've also managed to tuck down here as well my metal guillotine that just slots quite nicely down in that gap and keeps it tucked out of the way quite nicely. And then on the shelves sort of above the Hunter and the other shelving unit, I've had a bit of a rearrangement, got some of the larger boxes of tools up there, a shelf for just general storage dumping ground at the moment. And then on top of this one up here, I have my combined collection of mine and my dad's Ryobi tools. We bought into the Ryobi ecosystem many years ago when it was one of the first to do the multiple tools with one battery. Obviously I know that pretty much every manufacturer has now moved on to doing that as well, and arguably some of the other brands have a wider range now, but when you've bought into a battery system you tend to stick with it. I do also have, so I've got a couple of chargers and a few batteries on 3D printed holders just to keep them out of the way. I also have a snap-on and also a Milwaukee item as well, and the relevant chargers. The Milwaukee item is this utterly beastly impact driver. It does something ridiculous like 2,000 Newton meters of torque. It's absolutely hefty and way overkill again for a home enthusiast, but with my dad being in the motor trade, he tended to go all out on it. And you know, I would much rather have my dad than his tools, but his tools are a fitting memory, and no, I think of him every time I use any one of his tools. So I'm very vertically challenged here. I've got 2.3 meters to the ceiling, and with the beam that runs across, even less than that. So I have very limited options for getting stuff up high, but I do store a few things on top of the garage door mechanism. Nice long, relatively light things, and up between the windows I have a couple of shelves full of wood. And if you were watching an episode a little while back, you will remember that one of those pieces of wood fell off and landed on the rear quarter of the Anglia, so that's a nice dent that I need to sort out. And then I suppose whilst we're looking up, I've also added a couple of old shelving brackets to the ceiling, one there above the door and another one just over there, and I've dangled some pieces of string from them which I sometimes use for hanging things to paint. And lighting wise, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 big LED strip lights on that side. Just recently added the one in the middle, and then over this side I've got 3. Unfortunately, most of those get blocked by the garage door when it's open, so this kind of back section of the garage is a bit dull when I've got the door open, so I might need to look at that in the future. And then finally, what might end up being my favourite piece of equipment in the garage, time will tell, is this little trolley on wheels. At the moment I have just my socket set on here and a couple of tools to hand. I've got a little snap-on impact gun there, and my most recent purchase is a snap-on long reach 3/8 inch drive ratchet. So we'll see how I get on with that, see how much I use it really. So yeah, this trolley is definitely going to be an evolution, and the plan is that I will start to add some more brackets and 3D print some things to hold tools that I use most often, so that I've got this to hand with all my most commonly used tools, rather than having to keep going to the toolbox. Because as you'll probably find, you go to a toolbox, you get out a selection of your favourite tools, you do your job, at the end of the day you go and put them all away back in the toolbox. The next day you come out and you go and get probably exactly the same set of tools out, go do your job, and then put them away at the end of the day. So I'm hoping that with this trolley I'll have a place to put them. I can wheel it around down the side of the car and around the back to be a little bit nearer to where I want to be. And yeah, this is definitely going to be an evolution of things, and I will definitely make more use of my 3D printer. So apologies this week for the non-Anglia related video, but I have spent all my time sorting out the garage and trying to get this equipment in, and I thought it'd be nice to give you a quick look around the garage with a little bit of explanation from me of what's what, and hopefully it will give you some kind of inspiration as to what you could do in your garage to make it a little bit nicer to work in. So I am taking the Anglia on the dyno basically like less than 24 hours after this video comes out, so I have very little time to get it prepped. One of the things I want to do, make sure it doesn't throw itself off the dyno and I'm not adding extra drag through the tyres, is to get the Hunter fired up and get it hooked up to the Anglia to get the wheels aligned. And there's a couple of other things I need to do as well, so catch that in the next episode, and we'll also see how well the Anglia goes on the dyno, how much power we can make, and hopefully it won't go bang. Keeping my fingers crossed. So I would love to hear down in the comments section any ideas that you might have for your workshop that you want to share with everybody, and if there's anything that you have seen here that you really like that you're going to steal for yourself. The TIG trolley, the holders that I made for the tubes. I've put that up on a 3D printing sharing site called Thingiverse. So if you want to go and download that and print those for yourself, then the links will be down in the description for that. Also down in the description are links of how you can help out the channel, such as joining me on Patreon and support the channel. You can get these videos a day earlier than the rest of the world, and that would be really, really appreciated. I have 8 people so far who have put their hands in their pockets and give me just a small amount to them every month, and it is really, really appreciated. So thank you very much, guys and girls, for that. But unfortunately, that's all I've got time for. I must get the car ready for the dyno. I've been looking forward to that for so long, so really, really excited, but also nervous at the same time to see how it performs. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.